Welcome, folks. This is the Political Survivalist. Hopefully, this experiment will be entertaining, helpful, hopefully critical. Some days I'll review movies and TV shows as I will today. Some days I'll discuss politics, which is another topic of today. And I'll also be doing book reviews. I will probably do some camping gear reviews and some survival related things. Um, and then who knows? I'll probably end up talking about sports too. I like sports, football and hockey. I guess baseball sometimes. I don't get really into baseball. It's hard to follow sometimes because there's so many different players coming in and out of the league all the time. But recently, I saw the movie Black Panther. I feel like I need to see the movie again to get a better handle on it. It was really good and intriguing. It's just some of the topics were kind of complex, and I feel like I missed some things. The funny thing is, we went to see it, or I went to see it with my fiance, and that was on a Thursday, which is a student movie night up here. We were all set to go to an earlier showing of it, but they were completely sold out by the time we got there, which is weird. Where I'm from, you can just kind of walk into a movie theater and really not expect there to be full seats. So that was strange. I guess I'm privileged in that area. The I'm guessing that happens a lot more in bigger cities, but that's just one of the perks of living in a small town, I guess. Being able to see a movie whenever you want to. um, but usually I never have to call the theater. That's kind of my point, I guess. But we got tickets to a later showing, and we just stuck around because there's actually a bar in the theater, so we just hung around there for a bit. Uh, Before I get to talking about the movie, what has happened with previews on movies these days? It's just it seemed like in the past, I don't know, maybe a year or two, the the amount of previews leading up to the movie has gotten longer and longer. I don't know what they're trying to do. Maybe they're just trying to bore us enough to get us out of the movie before it even happens, just so they can get their money. I don't know. It seemed like it was a good 20 minutes before the movie even started. Like, did I really need to show up at 10 o'clock to see the movie? Probably not. I probably could have showed up at like 10:30 and not missed a thing. I mean, it might be just me, but the movie seemed longer. I don't know if it was just because of the previews, but like I said, it started at 10. We didn't get out of there until midnight 30 ish, somewhere in there. I can't tell you exactly when the movie ended. So I mean, it took it was a long night. Um, but that's the thing. If it was a long movie, that's okay. I don't care if it's a long movie or not. Sometimes I like long movies. One of my favorite movies is Braveheart. That's a pretty long movie. Um, but it seemed like every scene was necessary in the film, and it's not like they wasted a whole bunch of time talking about nonsense. So I mean, it seemed like everything they put in there was worthwhile. But the interesting thing about this movie is, I mean, it's a superhero movie, but they spent very little time talking about the hero itself. It seemed like the fact that he was already introduced in another film. They kind of just left out the some of the nitty gritties about him, and they focused more so on establishing the society that they live in, which is Wakanda. So the Wakandan society, they focused a lot on how intricate that society is, and then they also talked about the motivations of the villain quite a bit. It seemed like that those were the two main focuses of the movie, and a little less on the hero itself, Black Panther. And from this point forward, spoiler alert, I'll give you a few seconds to adjust in case you haven't seen it yet. But if you stay tuned in, I will be talking about it in depth. So just a fair warning. Okay, so the Wakandan society is a technologically advanced society who wishes to be exceptional, and in many ways they are. They were very exceptional. For example, they have flying crafts, like flying airplanes, that can be piloted remotely, which I mean we have today, but it gives the pilot the illusion that they're actually inside the aircraft, like they can be sitting in a room and there's the like they can see out of the aircraft and they're actually in a chair. It's kind of cool. But then they're also able to heal nerve damage, which is insanely advanced. And they're also able to bring people back from near death within seconds. Um, but then also let's not forget about the computer programming, which can digitally lay out a landscape like on a table, and they texture it in a way that you can have like a three-dimensional video or landscape going live, just right in front of you, and it's like 3D, like on the table, just raised up. It is kind of cool. Um, uh, and the thing that makes them stand out in the world, this Wakandan society, is the access to a specific metal called vibranium. Um, Now, maybe I'm just not fully understanding the implications of elements, but I have a hard time believing that a society that had access to this metal, as well as like the average resources that you'd have on Earth, that they would be this far ahead of the rest of the Earth on a technological basis. It just doesn't make sense to me that this specific metal gave them ability to come up with a way to fix nerve damage. Um, but maybe I just don't fully grasp the effects or of a new metal that it could have on society. Who knows? Maybe that is an actual implication that if a new metal were to be discovered in our reality, would it be able to get us that far advanced? Um, and that's really all I have to say about the Wakandan society for now. So let's talk about the villain. Killmonger is his name, and apparently killing is what he does best. um, but his main motivation for his acts is that he believes that Wakandans are being greedy and keeping the benefits of their society to themselves while the world around them falls apart. Um, I guess this is where ideology kicks in. Um, the Wakandan people want to keep its people safe, and the easiest way to do that is to act like they have nothing of true value, which is pretty much the gray man theory, which I am an advocate of. But that's for later. I'll talk about the gray man eventually. Um, so anyway, Killmonger, he wishes to take over the Wakandan society in order to wage war on the world who has treated African folk like second-class citizens. And I guess I believe that sums up his basic motivations. So according to Killmonger, Wakanda has a moral obligation to be charitable with its progress. Which, I mean, if we take into aspect technological advances um, like the steam engine, I mean, if they hadn't been charitable and offered that to the society, we'd probably be farther behind. But there's something to say about private ownership of things. But this is also something that I've noticed, and why is it that when some members of society demand that value be shared? I mean, I would argue that these members of society that demand value to be shared are just as greedy as those who refuse to share their valued resource. I mean, I'll probably do a video sooner or later about the value of humanity, and hopefully I'll go into further detail. But in this movie, I see Killmonger as kind of like a socialist, saying, "Hey, you got these resources, and you're benefiting a lot from them, but you need to start sharing with the people who have less because they're that far behind." But then you also have the Wakandan people, who I think are capitalists because they want to protect their resources, they want to protect their people, they feel the need that they should have first access to it so their people are secure and safe. It's not about everybody in the world, it's about their people. Um, Now, maybe I'm reading a little bit too far into it, but I mean, it does seem like there's a political debate going on here in the movie. It seems like the Wakandan people are more conservative than what somebody like Killmonger. Killmonger seems, like I said, a little bit more on the socialist spectrum. But I'm not the only one who thinks that there's politics to see in the movies. Um, so there's some here's something from not so lovely people at Fox on the Black Panther movie. Todd Vanderwerf, one of their cultural critical writers, wrote up an article titled "With Great Power Comes Great Uncertainty: Marvel's Slowly Evolving Politics." Uh, um, the writer makes a comparison between Black Panther and a short story titled "The One Who Walks Away from Omelas." Omelas. I've never heard of it, but he claims it to be famous. Um, it's a story, a short story, I guess. Have never read it, but I guess it's about utopia and the fact that almost every single person in the society has access to this utopia, but there's one person in the society that's constantly tortured, um, as kind of like the like equal and opposite reactions. If everybody's got it good, somebody's got to suffer the consequences, I guess. So Todd Vanderwerf that wrote this article, he says um, that every utopia is also a dystopia if you look at it from the right angle, and vice versa.
Well, no shit.
Yeah, every single time a utopia has been tried in our society, it has failed, and it has failed catastrophically. I mean, if we look at the utopian vision of the Nazi Party in Germany, they thought that the white Aryan race was superior, and they were going to create the society for their white nationalists, and then get rid of everybody else. How did that work for the Jews? It didn't work out so good, now did it? So it's a dystopia. If you look at it from the right angle, what angle are you looking at? It's a dystopia because an entire group of people are getting erased. Just like in this story, the one who walks away from O'Malley's, I'm guessing that's how you pronounce it. One kid is getting tortured endlessly while other people, living life, doing their thing, whatever, doing their thing. And then also you got, bring it back to real life. You got the communist organizations put forth by Marx. They were tried in Soviet Russia, but then you got the kulaks. They got killed in massive numbers just for being farmers and having a little bit of success. Every single time it's been tried. There's a book. It's called The Utopian's Road to Hell. I forget who wrote it, but I will do a book review on it, and it's a fantastic read. But it tells you exactly why a utopian dream is impossible to achieve, because somebody is going to end up getting killed off, and that's just not how a well-functioning society works. But this writer, he goes on to tell the readers that the reason we have all these superhero films now is due to 9/11. So apparently 9/11 is the cause of all these superhero films. Crash into a building and all of a sudden we got Iron Man floating around in our TV screens. um, and I guess he argues it by that the American people are attempting to erase the tragedy by going to a world where superheroes save people from tragedy. I guess there's some logic there. I see it, but I don't think he has any evidence besides just general assumption. I believe it's more reasonable to say that there's a correlation to the age of the movie makers. These are the kids that grew up reading comic books, but now they're grown up and they have access to technology and able to create. So what are they going to do? They're going to bring back their comic book, their inner kid, and they're going to say, "Hey, let's do this. Let's make something. We think we can make a lot of money off it because all these kids are growing up now, and they want to see this stuff." And I also believe that we now have the technological ability to create superhero movies like we do now. In previous decades, technology was only limited to a certain point. I mean, we had to use bodybuilders like Lou Ferrigno to portray the Hulk. I mean, we couldn't CGI the full Hulk body. It had to be some 6'3" or 4". I don't know how tall he is, but he's a big guy. But I mean, he's not as big as the Hulk would be in the comics. It's a fictional character. So you kind of need some technology to create these things to make them actually legitimately appealing to a large audience. Um, yeah. So to make the assumption about the whole national motivation of escapism, like if everybody's just trying to escape from this reality, I think it's a little extreme to make the argument that that is the only reason that we have superhero films today. It doesn't make sense to me. You got technological advances, and you got kids growing up that used to be that used to be into comics and now have the ability to create an entirely new media form. Well, it's not really new media form, but it's a form of media that it wasn't as technologically advanced. So yeah, I guess it's just too much of an assumption to make the argument for me. But that's picking at needles with this guy's article. But part of me wishes I could just read an opinion about the politics of the Marvel Cinematic Universe and how, in this case, uncertainty was a big weakness to the hero in the movie Black Panther, um, which he says that he's going to discuss it in his introduction, but he doesn't discuss it until nearly the end of the article. And but then, like when you're going along this article, it's a long article. He's just basically throwing out any intellectual thing to make himself sound smart. And he puts this quote in there. It states, "The very idea of a superhero, someone whose very being is just better than everyone else, carries certain fascistic overtones. After all, in a world with superpowered humans and other creatures, might, like might, literally could make right. The best superhero stories, consequently, are aware of this troubling undertone and either examine it or deconstruct it in interesting ways."
My head hurts. That's your brain trying to comprehend its own stupidity.
Does he mean like fascistic overtones, or does he mean supremacist overtones? I mean, there's a big difference here. Uh, I hope he does, because fascism is not. It doesn't mean being better than everybody else. Aaron Rodgers, oh, sorry, Aaron Rodgers is not a fascist because he's better than everybody at throwing a ball as a quarterback. He's not fascist for that. See, fascism or fascist is someone who forcefully suppresses others who may be better than them. They're forcibly submitting other people to their rule. A superhero doesn't do that. A supervillain does. The very idea of a superhero is capitalistic, really, in that the hero must rise to beat the powerful competition of a villain. I mean, it seems pretty capitalistic to me. I don't know. That's debatable, but I don't know. I think I have a point. Um, the next argument that that he states in that paragraph is, after all, in a world with superpowered humans and other creations, might, strength, he uses might, he could have just used strength, literally could make right. That is the mentality of the villain. Like I said, in the fascist society, that is the mentality of the villain. Villains in superhero movies believe that they have the might, and therefore they are right. A hero does not think this way. If they did, they would quickly become the villain. A hero's mentality is the idea that I have the might to stop those who wish to do wrong. And yes, I see the counter to this. Right and wrong is perspective. Heroes see villains as evil, and villains see heroes as evil. So what's the point? It's a perspective. It's all in the eyes of the beholder. The difference here is the moral code, which is why superhero stories sometimes have this inner conflict within the hero. You know the line from Spider-Man: "With great power comes great responsibility." A hero has a responsibility to live by a moral code. A villain does not. Therefore, might equals right cannot be the inner dialogue of a hero. Morality and might equals right. That's the mentality of a hero. And I mean, a hero doesn't have to be a superhero. If you look all the way back to British literature, you got Sir Gawain and the Green Knight. He's a hero. He's got inner morality, and he's a knight. He's got the might, and he's got an inner morality. So that makes him right. Granted, at the end of it, he does show that he does have this inner fear, but that's also a trait of a hero. A hero can't be just all cocky and all powerful. No, that's again, that's a fascist. A fascist is so confident in their ability, they suppress others through the use of fear. They're not the ones that are afraid. They use fear to gain power. Heroes are afraid because of what they're doing. They're putting their lives on the line. But Vanderwerf, the writer, he goes on to make the argument that the most common criticism of Marvel, back to the story again, he goes back and forth between politics and the movies and the movies. So guess what I'm doing? I'm going back and forth. Roll my eyes. But he says that the most common criticism of Marvel movies is that they don't have good villains. Like the villains aren't, appealing to mass audiences. But I don't know if that's the most common criticism. But hey, why not? He says it. I'll agree that DC does a better job at creating villains, which he argues that DC does a much better job at making villains more. They make them just better. They're more interesting. Um, and actually, I believe that also is in part why DC is better than Marvel. Um, I mean, I can argue that further, but now's not really the time. But I also disagree with him that in saying that Marvel's villains are bad characters. I understand that so far Marvel has put out a few villains that just don't have the chaotic spark that viewers enjoy. Like the Joker and Harley Quinn. They're so intriguing as characters. You want to know more about them. But pretty much every Iron Man movie that they've come out with has had a disappointing villain. I mean, Ironmonger from the first one, Jebediah Stane. I forget if that's his first name or not. Honestly, I don't care. Like, I don't care anymore about him. Like, I got everything I needed from that one movie. That's it. Then the next one, Whiplash, same deal. He had very little dialogue in the first place. I mean, that might be just because the actor they used. I don't think he is that great of an actor. I mean, he plays a tough guy pretty well, but I mean, when it comes to speaking dialogue and whatnot, I don't think he's that great. And then The Mandarin was a huge disappointment in my book. And then the same movie, it was Extremis. They're not intriguing villains. Like they're just there. They're hanging around, doing some bad stuff. They get stopped. Ooh, not gonna see them again. Yeah, but so I see where he's coming from. But in the Black Panther movie alone, we had Killmonger and Ulysses Claw, both of whom were very well written. Killmonger was an overconfident jerk who threw his ability around. Spoiler alert. If they didn't kill him off, I would be looking forward to see him reappear in the future. Yeah, he dies, but I mean, if he hadn't died, I would be looking forward to seeing him again. And Claw, he's a psychotic smuggler and all around BAMF. Like, he is badass, and he was hilarious and yet intimidating. Again, spoiler alert. Once again, if they didn't kill him off, I would be looking forward to seeing him again in future films. Although he might actually come back. It occurred to me in the middle of the movie that Claw was actually this guy from the comics. Claw, a super. He's a super villain with a solid sound body. Once again, I don't quite understand the physics of that, but if you're interested, I look the character up on Marvel database. That's what I use, I guess, for most of my just random questions about comics. I know, what a nerd. Um, I mean, I've seen the character Claw appear in several comics, and I'm always impressed with the character. So who knows if the MCU plans to bring him back to life? Who knows? Um, but back to the argument, though. Uh, Other villains that stood out to me in the films have been Emil Blonsky from Incredible Hulk, who I thought was a great villain. He was, this army guy that was really fixated with power, and I think he'd be a really good character to bring back as a villain in one of the Avengers movies. Um, and then another great one was Armin Zola, another great villain, who in the comics gets played up huge, like he's a big time villain, but he just kind of sat there on a computer screen in the middle of Winter Soldier. I would love to see the films go even farther with his character and make him actually come to life as his robotic self. It'd be really cool. And in the newest Spider-Man, you had the Vulture, who, I mean, he wasn't the greatest villain of all time, but honestly, I'm intrigued, and I would like to see him back. He was really cool. I liked his jetpack and his wings. They're pretty sweet, actually. Um, and I mean, there are plenty of other great villains from the comics, but they just haven't been introduced yet. And I think that's what he's getting at mostly is that the villains that have been put into the movies so far haven't been the greatest. But there's plenty to choose from. I mean, I know X Men is a different one, but Magneto, he is so sweet. Um, and then there's plenty of others. I won't go on. I'm already starting to drag on, but they're good. It's not like they're bad. I mean, they're bad. They're villains, but they're not terrible characters. Um, okay, so back to the article. He eventually goes on, and he gets on topic, um, introducing the that he had in the introduction. It's a long article, so I mean it takes a while for him to get back on point. But the political statement in Black Panther, um, Vanderwerf comes to many of the same observations that I did. Though it seems that he seems to side with Killmonger more than I do, stating that he states that no matter what the horrors Killmonger commits in the process of building his new world order, it's hard to disagree with him that the current one is hopelessly broke. That's what he says. Vanderwerf also sees a similarity between the Wakandan ideology and conservative ideology, even though he thinks it may be misguided. The writer then went on to say that he didn't think that these conflicts would have led to an ultimate fight that occurred. He argues that a topic like this would usually be debated, which I guess I understand where he's coming from. Among objective people, physically fighting over these issues makes more trouble for you than you would typically want. But that assumes that these people are objective. As I said before, there's a stark difference between a hero and a villain. The villain uses his or her might to do what they believe is right. So when the moral opposition um, with might comes in between the villain and their goal, their mindset is already to use might, and now it's somebody's in their way. You're going to ultimately lead to a fight. Most political opposition, most political opinions, and the fear of one ideology over another is something fought over all the time, though, throughout history. If we just look at the American Civil War, for example, you can see this. We were completely divided politically, and these political parties hated each other. I mean, I'll go into better detail than that in the future, I hope. Um, but I mean, it's pretty obvious that the writer of this article, Vanderwerf's, his opinions are starkly oppositional to my opinions. Um, as he said that he thinks that it's hard to disagree with Killmonger that the current system is hopelessly broken. Come on, dude. If it's hopelessly broken, why are people still moving to America? Like, it's just we have activists on the left trying to get more and more people into America all the time. If it's that broken, shouldn't we be sending them to a socialist country that you guys so much love? And then his other argument, that the Wakandan ideology and conservative ideologies are similar, but he thinks they're misguided. I mean, yeah, the only reason you say that it's misguided, I think, is because this is an African culture. And to you, it's impossible for anybody but right wing Americans to be conservative, to want secure borders. You know, is it just that staunchly like, oh, it can't be possible that they're conservative? Oh, dear heavens. Honestly, I don't see how you could think of it as misguided. I see a lot of similarities, or maybe it's that the fact that you think that all conservatives are like Trump, and Trump is not even a conservative. He's more of a liberal, to be honest. I'll go into that in the future too. I don't care. I'm not the biggest fan of Trump, to be honest. It's, you know, but as I said, his opinions are this author's opinions are completely oppositional to mine. In the same article, he goes on about how people don't like to be told that their lives are uh, unsustainable, and that the people of this country are not questioning themselves and are refusing to change radically because that might mean finally understanding all the things broken inside and the bright and shining city. As you can imagine, I have several issues with this premise, and but that's not what this video is about. I mean, I got into as much as I could, but these opinions, I believe, are really toxic. But what can you take away from this video right here? One, heroes are different from villains. Of course they are. But I guess some people just don't understand that. They don't understand the moral code of a hero versus the moral code of a villain. Two, the Black Panther movie was great. I recommend it to anybody, even if you haven't seen the rest of the Marvel movies. I mean, there are a few parts that you might be a little lost in, but they explain it slightly enough to get a actually decent understanding of it. It's a good movie, fantastic movie. I recommend you seeing it. And three, the third thing that you take from this film, this clip, the Wakandan society actually provides an interesting look into society. Um, and the specific society that it takes an interesting look into is the one that wants to strictly regulate its interactions with outsiders. Like they want to be segregated from everybody, but not have internal segregation. You know, they want their people to be free in their society, but they just want to keep everybody out. And it may be interesting to give that a little bit more thought when watching the movie. Um, it might shed some light into the opinions of people who want secure borders here. Even like if you're a liberal watching this, you obviously have a lot of things to say about some of the things that I have to say, and you can argue them. I'm not sure I'll be able to answer everybody's opinions or counteract with a secondary argument, but I think it's interesting that if you can look at this movie as kind of a how somebody would want secure borders in this country, look at it from their perspective, and then kind of apply it to us. It's basically what we want. We think we're exceptional in America, which you can make the argument that we're not. You know, we're just people. We're humans. but we live in a very good society. I mean, we still have mass amounts of immigration into this country, and I mean, there's a reason for that. It's a good country, and yeah, I mean, it's got problems. Every country has its problems. I'll get into that too later on. But thanks for tuning in. I mean, this is my first video. Let me know if I did any good. I have no idea. But thanks for listening.